My name is Heather Connery, and my study was on mortality, salience, and geographic regions' impacts on perceptions of racism. Racism has always been a prevalent problem in the United States, and more recently it's become as bad as it was 70 to 80 years ago, as we saw on January 6, 2021. There are two main types of aversive racism we see right now. The first is aversive, which tend to be more offhanded comments. They're not as easily recognized by the general population. And the second is overt, which are your typical racial slurs and outright acts of violence against certain populations. Historically, racism has been more prevalent in the southern U.S. versus the northern U.S., according to Inwood in his research in 2015. However, mortality salience, or the fear of death, leads people to cling to cultural worldviews and bias toward those with similar views. Evidence suggests that mortality salience leads people to engage in more stereotypic thinking, such as engaging in racial discrimination. My hypothesis for the study was mortality salience and geographic location of rearing impacts one's perceptions of acts of racial discrimination. My study utilized a 2x3 IV by PV factorial design. My independent variable was the presence or absence of mortality salience, and my participant variable was the region where participant was raised, so northern U.S., southern U.S., or non-U.S. And this was characterized by looking at the past 3 presidential election results for all states in the United States, and they were averaged. So if they were mostly blue in the past 3 elections, they were coded as northern U.S., and if they were mostly red in the past 3 elections, they were coded as southern U.S., and my dependent variable was the overall rating of aversive and overt forms of racial discrimination on the questionnaire. All research was conducted online, so participants were first emailed the consent form, and they were instructed to read, date, type their name, and email it back to me, which served as their virtual signature. Once they had completed this, they were emailed a second time with all instructions and materials for the study. They were first randomly selected and assigned to one of 2 conditions via coin flip, so they either received the mortality salience condition or the control condition. They were emailed with detailed instructions to first open up the PowerPoint, their respective PowerPoint, which served as the mortality salience manipulation. The slides were all pre-timed, so all they had to do was click slideshow from beginning. After they had watched the slideshow in its entirety, they were instructed to click the link to a distraction task of an online word search and work on it for 5 minutes. They were informed that not completing the word search in 5 minutes served as no penalty. And finally, they were instructed to click on the Microsoft Forms link, which included a questionnaire and demographic form. The questionnaire contained scenarios, 3 of which were control scenarios where no racial discrimination was present. 7 of them contained aversive racism scenarios, where offhanded comments and such were present, and 5 were overt racism scenarios. The participants were asked to rate the level of racism present in the scenario on a 1 to 5 Likert type rating scale, 1 being no racism present, 5 being overtly racist, and 3 being aversive. Participants then completed the demographic form within the same document. And the key question for the participant variable was, where were you raised? And participants just had to type the state or country they were raised in. Finally, the participants were provided with a debriefing statement and provided links for counseling services if they needed them. For my results, a multiple ANOVA, or analysis of variance, was conducted. The scores from the questionnaire were grouped by the no racism, aversive racism, and overt racism, and summed for total scores out of 25 for overt, 35 for aversive, and 15 for control. No significance was found on the mortality salience MANOVA, and for the individual MANOVAs, there was no significance found for mortality salience and overt racism, mortality salience and aversive racism, geographic region, and racism. For my discussion and conclusion, no significance was found in the relationship between mortality salience and perceptions of racism, nor was any significant relationship found between geographic region and perceptions of racism. One of the problems with this study was sample sizes were incredibly small and consisted primarily of individuals from those red or southern states. In the future, I would like to increase the sample sizes to hopefully find at least a trend towards significance or actual significance. And I may also consider other methods of measuring perceptions of racism, such as the implicit association test.